Victoria Beckham has finally done what few thought she ever would. She's telling the truth. For decades, she smiled for cameras, posed on red carpets, and lived under the weight of being posh spice. But behind the perfect image was a painful secret. And in her brand new Netflix documentary, Victoria opens up about the hidden battle that nearly destroyed her. Her decades-long struggle with an eating disorder, public humiliation, and the collapse of her fashion empire. This is the untold story of a woman who seemed to have it all, but was quietly breaking underneath the pressure to stay perfect. Victoria Beckham admits that her war with body image didn't start with fame. It started long before the Spice Girls ever existed. At just 16, she was studying theater, surrounded by girls she thought were prettier, slimmer, and more confident. She remembers a teacher telling her she didn't have the look for leading roles. Those words stuck like glue. "I started to doubt myself. I didn't like what I saw in the mirror," she says in the documentary. From that moment, her reflection became her biggest enemy, and the world's obsession with her body would only make that mirror harder to face. But those early wounds were just the beginning of something much darker. When the Spice Girls exploded onto the scene in the mid-90s, they weren't just pop stars. They were icons of girl power. But while the world saw confidence and glamour, Victoria was silently spiraling. Tabloids called her Porky Spice after a few unflattering photos. Later, they renamed her Skinny Posh as she lost weight. To the world, it was gossip. To her, it was torment. She admits she began controlling her weight in incredibly unhealthy ways. Food became something to fear, not enjoy. And behind her designer sunglasses, she hid exhaustion, anxiety, and guilt. She says, "When you have an eating disorder, you become very good at lying. I wasn't honest with anyone, not even my parents." But one public humiliation would push her beyond her limit, a moment broadcast to millions. In 1999, just months after giving birth to her first son, Brooklyn, Victoria appeared on the British show TFI Friday, hosted by Chris Evans. What was supposed to be a fun interview turned into one of the most painful moments of her life. In front of the audience, Evans asked her to step on a scale. She laughed awkwardly, the way celebrities often do when they're uncomfortable. But inside, she was shattered. "We laugh about it now," she says softly. "But I was really young. That hurt." Imagine giving birth, adjusting to motherhood, and then being weighed on national TV, all for entertainment. That moment became a symbol of how public scrutiny could strip a person of dignity, and it marked a turning point. From then on, Victoria learned to hide her pain behind absolute control over her image, her emotions, and her career. But the more control she tried to gain, the more her life began to unravel. When Victoria launched her luxury fashion brand in 2008, she wanted respect. She wanted to prove she was more than a pop star. And for a while, it worked. The fashion world praised her elegant designs and minimalist aesthetic. But behind the runway lights, her empire was bleeding money. For years, the brand lost tens of millions of pounds. Reports revealed shocking expenses, over £70,000 a year on office plants, and £115,000 just to have them watered. At one point, she was flying furniture across continents just to stage a show. Her business was drowning in debt, and Victoria admits she cried before work almost every morning. She said, "I used to sit in the car outside the office, wipe my tears, and walk in with a smile." The woman the world saw as unshakable was falling apart inside. Eventually, her husband David Beckham had to step in to save the company. He injected millions to keep it afloat, a move that Victoria describes as both a relief and a humiliation. "I hated having to ask him for help. My business was everything to me," she says. But the rescue came with a price. It forced her to confront the truth about how fragile her empire really was. As her brand struggled, Critics in the fashion industry whispered that Victoria Beckham was just another celebrity playing designer. She knew people didn't take her seriously. Even Anna Wintour once admitted she wasn't sure what to expect from Victoria's debut show. That pressure to be perfect only fueled her isolation. She admits that during this period, she felt completely frozen, stuck between who she was as Posh Spice and who she wanted to be as a serious businesswoman. The more she tried to reinvent herself, the more trapped she felt by the persona she'd built. By 2016, it all came crashing down. Her business finances were dire. Investors were nervous, and she found herself crying in the bathroom before meetings, afraid of losing everything she'd built. But in her lowest moment, something changed. David Beckham told her, "You don't have to prove anything to anyone anymore. Just be you." And for the first time, she listened. In 2017, new investors from the Neo Group stepped in to keep Victoria's brand alive. They described the company as a disaster, but they also saw its potential. With new management and Victoria's determination, the brand slowly began to recover. Stores opened in London and New York, and her design started appearing in more than 50 countries. But Victoria's comeback wasn't just financial, it was emotional. She had to learn to let go of the armor she'd worn for decades. She says, "The minute I see a camera, the barrier goes up. That's why I don't smile. I'm protecting myself." And then, with a laugh, she adds, "I do smile, just not from the right angle." For the first time, she's owning her contradictions. The vulnerability behind the confidence, the self-doubt behind the perfection. She's not hiding anymore. The documentary doesn't shy away from showing Victoria's loneliness after the Spice Girls ended. She went from touring stadiums to living quietly in Manchester as a young mother and wife, to one of the world's most famous athletes. She recalls, "One day I was shouting girl power. The next, I was just alone in Manchester. I felt frozen in time." It was a difficult adjustment, trading fame for family, music for motherhood, individuality for invisibility. Tabloids mocked her relentlessly during the 2006 World Cup, labeling her part of the WAG lifestyle. Behind every glamorous photo was a woman trying to redefine who she was. That moment, when she buried those bold looks in Baden-Baden, as she jokes, was when she decided to reinvent herself completely. No more loud outfits, no more caricature of Posh Spice. She would become something new, a woman with purpose, not just an image. Now, after decades of silence, Victoria Beckham is reclaiming her narrative. Her Netflix documentary isn't just a confession, it's a declaration of control. She says, "I've been everything from Porky Posh to Skinny Posh, but I've learned that being myself is enough." It's a line that hits hard because it's honest. For years, people defined her by labels, looks, and gossip. But now, she's defining herself, not as a Spice Girl, not as a footballer's wife, not even as a designer, just as Victoria. And perhaps that's why the world can't stop talking about her story. Because it isn't just hers. It's about every person who's ever been told they're not good enough, not pretty enough, not strong enough. Victoria Beckham's journey shows that even the most polished images hide cracks, and that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is tell the truth about the pain you once buried. Today, Victoria Beckham stands at 51, still glamorous, still disciplined, but no longer pretending to be invincible. Her brand is stronger, her family closer, and her story finally her own. She's not chasing perfection anymore. She's embracing honesty. And maybe that's the real transformation. From the girl who hid behind a smile, to the woman who found strength in vulnerability. So, as her documentary streams worldwide, one question lingers. After years of fame, fortune, and reinvention, has Victoria Beckham finally found peace? Not with the world, but with herself.